The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and hope, the kind that clings to new beginnings. Sarah lay in the bed, her body aching from the marathon of delivering twins, her heart swollen with love for the two tiny lives cradled in her arms. Emma and Ethan, swaddled in soft white blankets, their faces scrunched and perfect, were her world now. She glanced at the empty chair beside her, where Mark should have been. Her husband had slipped out hours ago, promising to grab coffee and call their families. The clock ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2. The nurse's pitying glances told her what her heart refused to accept. Mark wasn't coming back. By dawn, the truth landed like a stone in her gut. A nurse handed her a note, found in the hospital parking lot, and Mark's hurried scrawl, "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm with Lisa." Lisa, his coworker. The woman Sarah had invited to their barbecue last summer, laughing over burgers while Lisa's eyes lingered too long on Mark. Sarah's hands trembled, crumpling the note. She looked at her twins, their tiny chest rising and falling, and made a silent vow. "You will never feel this abandonment. I will be enough." The first year was a blur of sleepless nights and scraped-together courage. Sarah, a 32-year-old graphic designer, moved back to her hometown of Asheville, North Carolina, where the Blue Ridge Mountains stood like quiet sentinels. Her parents helped, but they were aging, their hands shaky from years of hard work. Sarah took freelance gigs, designing logos between feedings, her laptop balanced on a kitchen counter littered with baby bottles. The twins were her anchor and her storm, their giggles a lifeline, their cries a reminder of her solitude. Friends drifted away, unable to bridge the gap between their carefree lives and her new reality. The town whispered, "Poor Sarah, abandoned with 2 babies," but she held her head high, refusing to let pity define her. She found solace in small acts of kindness. Mrs. Carter, the elderly neighbor, brought casseroles and knitted booties for the twins. Jamal, the barista at the corner cafe, slipped her free coffee when she looked particularly worn. These gestures, tiny as they were, stitched together her fractured days. Sarah began to pay it forward. She'd leave extra change in the tip jar, offer to babysit for a struggling single mom at the library, or drop off groceries for Mr. Hensley, the widower down the street. She didn't have much, but she had heart, and she poured it into her community. Years slipped by, and the twins grew into bright, curious 5-year-olds. Emma had her mother's chestnut curls and a laugh that could light up a room. Ethan was quieter, his blue eyes always watching, always thinking. They asked about their father once, when a school project required a family tree. Sarah told them the truth, softened for their young hearts. "Your dad made a choice to leave, but you were loved more than you can imagine." They nodded, accepting it as kids do, and Sarah buried her ache beneath their bedtime stories. She built a life on her own terms. Her freelance work blossomed into a small design business, specializing in branding for local nonprofits. She volunteered at the community center, teaching art classes to kids who reminded her of Emma and Ethan. Her kindness became her signature, never loud, but steady, like a river carving through stone. She didn't know it, but people talked about Sarah not as the woman Mark left, but as the one who showed up. For everyone. Halfway across the country, in a sleek Chicago penthouse, Mark was unraveling. He'd run to Lisa that day in the hospital, chasing a fantasy of freedom. Lisa was all sharp edges and ambition, a marketing exec who promised a life unburdened by diapers and midnight feedings. For a while, it worked. They traveled, Paris, Tokyo, Dubai, living on her salary and his charm. He took a job in sales, riding her coattails, but the thrill faded. Lisa's late nights at the office turned cold, her laughter more cutting than kind. By the time Emma and Ethan turned 6, Lisa was gone, leaving Mark with a leased car he couldn't afford and a condo full of regrets. He thought of Sarah sometimes, in the quiet moments when the city's hum couldn't drown his guilt. He'd scroll through old photos on his phone, Sarah's smile at their wedding, her hand on her swollen belly, then lock the screen, unable to face himself. He told himself he'd done her a favor, setting her free from a man who couldn't handle the weight of fatherhood. But the truth gnawed at him. He'd been a coward. Back in Asheville, Sarah's life wasn't perfect, but it was full. The twins were thriving, their school projects pinned proudly on the fridge. She'd even started dating again, cautiously, a kind-eyed carpenter named Tom who built birdhouses with Ethan and braided Emma's hair with surprising skill. Sarah wasn't in love, not yet, but she liked the way Tom listened, the way he showed up without being asked. Then came the flood. A late summer hurricane tore through western North Carolina, swelling rivers and swallowing homes. Asheville's streets turned to mud, and Sarah's neighborhood was hit hard. Her small house, The one she'd scrimped to buy took on water, ruining furniture and her precious design equipment. The community center where she taught was half destroyed, its art supplies floating in murky water. Sarah didn't cry, not in front of the twins. She rolled up her sleeves, packed their essentials, and moved them to a shelter at the high school. The town rallied. Volunteers poured in, strangers and neighbors alike, hauling debris and distributing food. Sarah was everywhere, serving meals, organizing donations, sketching plans to rebuild the community center. Her selflessness wasn't new, but in crisis, it shone. She'd stay up late, comforting kids who'd lost toys, or listening to elders recount their fears. Emma and Ethan helped too, passing out water bottles with their small hands, their mother's kindness mirrored in their actions. Word of Asheville's recovery effort spread. A national news outlet picked up the story, filming Sarah as she handed out blankets, her face tired but resolute. The segment aired on a chilly November evening, and in a Chicago bar, Mark froze, a beer halfway to his lips. There she was, Sarah, older but unmistakable, her warmth radiating through the screen. The reporter called her the heart of Asheville's recovery, showing clips of her hugging a crying neighbor, laughing with kids in the shelter. Mark's chest tightened. He hadn't known about the flood. He hadn't known about her life. He hadn't known her strength. The next day, he booked a flight. He didn't know what he'd say, only that he needed to see her. To see them, Emma and Ethan, the children he'd abandoned. He landed in Asheville under a gray sky, the city still scarred but rebuilding. He found the high school shelter, its gym buzzing with cots and volunteers. Sarah was there, kneeling beside a little girl, drawing a flower on a notepad. Mark stood in the doorway, unnoticed, his throat thick. She looked different, stronger, her eyes carrying a quiet wisdom he didn't remember. He waited until she stepped outside for air. The twins were with Tom, sorting clothes in the gym. Mark approached, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah. She turned, and for a moment, her face was blank, as if he were a stranger. Then recognition hit, and her eyes hardened. What are you doing here? I saw you on the news, he said, his words stumbling. I needed to see you. To say I'm sorry. Sarah crossed her arms, her gaze steady. Sorry doesn't undo 7 years, Mark. He nodded, tears welling. I know. I was wrong. I was selfish. I left you alone with them, and his voice broke. I don't know how you did it. She didn't soften, but she didn't walk away. I did it because I had to. Because Emma and Ethan deserved a parent who stayed. Mark sank to his knees, not caring about the mud or the passers-by. I don't expect forgiveness. I saw you, Sarah. What you've done here, who you are. I didn't know you were this strong. I didn't know. Sarah's breath caught. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, screaming at him, slapping him, making him feel her pain. But now, seeing him broken, she felt something else, pity and a strange relief. She'd carried his betrayal like a stone in her chest, but in that moment, it loosened. She didn't need his apology to heal. She'd done that herself, with every casserole delivered, every child comforted. Every day she chose love over bitterness. Get up, Mark, she said quietly. This isn't about you anymore. He stood, wiping his face. Can I see them? Just once. Sarah hesitated. The twins didn't know him, didn't need him. But she thought of their questions, their family tree with its empty branch. Maybe seeing him, even briefly, would answer something for them. She nodded, leading him inside. Emma and Ethan were stacking blankets, giggling with Tom. Sarah knelt beside them. There's someone here to see you, she said, her voice calm. He's your dad, but he hasn't been part of our lives. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. Ethan's eyes narrowed, curious but guarded. Emma tilted her head, unafraid. Why'd you leave? She asked, her voice clear. Mark faltered, his hands shaking. I made a mistake, he said. The biggest one of my life. I'm so sorry. Ethan said nothing, stepping closer to Sarah. Emma nodded, then turned back to her blankets. It was enough for them, for now. Sarah stood, her hand on their shoulders. You can go, Mark, she said. We're okay. He left, carrying the weight of his choices. Sarah watched him disappear, then turned back to her twins, to Tom, to the shelter filled with people rebuilding together. The flood had taken much, but it hadn't taken her heart. That, she'd given freely, and it had grown stronger for it. Years later, Asheville thrived again. The community center reopened, its walls painted with murals Sarah designed. Emma and Ethan, now teenagers, helped run art classes, their laughter echoing through the halls. Sarah married Tom, a quiet ceremony under the mountains, surrounded by neighbors who'd become family. Mark sent letters sometimes, short and careful, asking about the twins. Sarah kept them in a drawer, unanswered but not discarded. Forgiveness wasn't a gift she owed him, but she'd found peace in letting go.